So you're a world leader, like a powerful politician or billionaire. One could even say you're part of the global elite, whatever that means. To get to where you are now, you obviously had to be smarter and much more capable than the other plebs out there, so you have this air of superiority around you. And you've bought into the idea that the masses are not peaceful, rational creatures? No. See, while society looks relatively peaceful on the outside, we all forget that under the surface, we're all just one meal away from a revolution. See, humans are filled with all these violent, sadistic, dangerous, animalistic forces that simmer deep within their unconscious. It's in all of us. That's why history is filled with violence, wars, killings, torture. Chaos and violence are not the exception to human nature, but part of the norm. And all these dangerous forces lurk underneath modern society as we speak, just waiting to be unleashed. And when these forces are unleashed under the right circumstances, the masses turn into an angry mob armed with pitchforks that only want one thing: your head on a stick. They may not have guns, they may not have the best military equipment, but strength in numbers is a very real thing, and angry mobs have the power to topple even governments, including the elite like you. They're eventually gonna want to pillage you. This poses a really big problem. If this is what you believe, then it completely goes against the idea of democracy. How can we trust the masses to make rational decisions if humans are irrational at their core? If it is true that humans are driven by these dangerous animalistic forces, then these plebs can't be trusted, we can't have democracy. We need to systematically rethink democracy. What we need is a group of only the smartest, most capable people on Earth, the global elite like you, to get together to manage this bewildered herd. We gotta protect the masses from themselves. We gotta round them up, disarm them, make them comfortable, make life easy, add some control measures while keeping them distracted. All in an effort to make them docile enough so that these powerful unconscious forces never have a chance of erupting. The problem is, changing democracy as we know it is a really big change. Plebs don't like really big changes. On top of that, democracy has such a rosy sound to the plebs. They think it's the source of all good. So when you, the elite, are saying that we need to change democracy, they're gonna be suspicious. The plebs aren't gonna be receptive to it, they haven't been primed. However, there is a shortcut to this rule of humans not wanting big change: a crisis. There's a reason why Winston Churchill once said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." It's because when there's a crisis, when the masses are suffering, they beg for a savior, they beg for a solution. And they'll listen to just about anyone who has the guts to stand on a podium and point out who the evil bad guy is, while offering a convenient solution. In this case, it would be restructuring democracy as we know it. This is what you need: the perfect crisis to give the world a little reset. Luckily, the perfect crisis just happened 2 years ago. People were thrown into poverty, the masses suddenly became open to insane amounts of surveillance and control, it destroyed the global economy. So you, the elite, slipped the perfect solution into the public's consciousness: a little something called the Great Reset. A grand restructuring of society as we know it, reshaping the way the masses live, spend, do business, all in an effort to keep the dangerous animalistic forces of the masses from ever getting out of hand. And this plan is led by a little-known organization called the World Economic Forum, or WEF. The WEF is a unique beast. On the outside, the WEF sounds so innocent. It's a forum about world economics, nothing more. Take a look on their website and you'll see that, oh, they talk about rising sea levels, peace, security, development, 11 world leaders trying to save the planet. But on the inside, it is something far more sinister. The WEF is a group of the most powerful people on the planet: CEOs, billionaires, world leaders, funded by 1,000 of some of the world's biggest corporations. They systematically influence politicians and infiltrate positions of power in countries all over the world, all in an effort to shape the world into their vision of what it should look like, which sounds a lot like a de facto world government. But it's not a government. It's not a business, no one voted them into office, and yet here they are, using their puppet strings to push the world towards their plan for a great reset. And it's all spearheaded by one man, Klaus Schwab, and almost everything is already falling into place. Stay dangerous, and this is the Great Reset. If you want to be successful and rich like these guys, you gotta put the best fuel possible in your body. That's why I take my diet a lot more seriously these days, but it wasn't always like this. Growing up, I was obsessed with chocolate and fruity cereal, until I found out that these cereals are absolutely horrible for you. That's why I was so excited when I found out about Magic Spoon. Magic Spoon is healthy cereal that tastes way too good to be true. It is the only cereal I eat these days, and it really gives you that childhood nostalgia with 0 grams of sugar, only 4 to 5 net grams of carbs per serving, and 13 to 14 grams of protein per serving. We've got cocoa, which is my favorite. Super chocolatey and tastes really unhealthy just the way I like it, but it actually is healthy. And to get you guys started, Magic Spoon is giving you guys $5 off for your own variety box by going to magicspoon.com/JakeTran and using the code JakeTran with the link below. They ship to the US, Canada, and the UK. So pause the video and go to magicspoon.com/JakeTran with the link below. Thanks to Magic Spoon for sponsoring this video.
Step 1 in the Great Reset. We can't keep the plebs in line if we don't know what they're doing every second of every day. We need to see everything, we need to know everything. Once we have that intel, then we can start rewarding or punishing them to keep them in line. That's why we're working on the perfect solution, the digital ID. Instead of carrying your normal ID or passport, you will soon have a digital ID that you will use for every aspect of life. To access healthcare and other vital services, to check into hotels and book international flights. You will use your digital ID to handle your taxes. Everything will be connected to your digital ID. All for your safety and convenience, of course. I mean, it only makes sense, right? Most of us have one email we use for our entire online lives. Why not have the equivalent of that for our physical lives? As Klaus Schwab said, quote, "In the near future, similar monitoring systems will also be applied to the movement and tracking of people," end quote. From where you go to shop, to what you eat, to the trips you take. They will track your habits and behavior every second of the day. Now we know what you're thinking. This sounds way too far-fetched. That could never happen. Oh, but it has already. All you have to do is look to our neighbors in the East.
Let's say China. China.
Ah yes, China. In China, everything you do or purchase is tied to your identity. Your flights, your train rides, etc. It's all overseen by the gracious Chinese Communist Party, which gives them some unique methods of social control. And guess who is a big fan of China? Klaus Schwab, of course. Schwab thinks China is doing a fantastic job and that we should model our Western world based on Chinese values. Here's him introducing the great Xi Jinping at the Davos agenda of 2022.
China has made significant economic and social achievements under your leadership. We now welcome His Excellency Xi Jinping, President of the People's Republic of China.
But we can't stop at just knowing what our plebs are doing. No, we gotta continue following in China's footsteps. See, once you have the data on what your subjects are doing, now we need to give them some way of knowing if they're being obedient enough or not. Kinda like a scoreboard for a video game. The plebs need some kind of feedback loop to see how they're doing, which brings us to step 2 of the Great Reset. Step 2. The scoreboard, also known as the social credit score. The system is simple. It's like training a dog, but for the masses. Simply set up the rules for your servants, track their actions. If their actions are in line with the rules, increase their score. If not, decrease their score. But when we talk about rules, we're not talking about basic rules like do not steal or do not murder. The masses already understand and respect those rules. We're talking about behavior. If you don't vote, your score will drop. If you criticize the government on TikTok, your score will drop. If you live too lavishly, your score will drop. An alternative, or maybe the first version of the social credit score, is the so-called carbon footprint tracker.
At billion consumers, we're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned, we don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
But here's the thing. A scoreboard is useless if there aren't any rewards or consequences for their actions. So after we have the score, we need to create the carrot and the stick. Step 3. Now it's time to add some rewards and punishments for your plebs' actions. Maybe they're eating too much meat. You want to block their access to certain restaurants or products. After all, meat is bad for the environment, right? If you see them buying too many books that are critical of the government, you might want to block their Audible and Kindle accounts. Maybe a big protest is breaking out in a certain area and your plebs are trying to travel to it to participate. Simply lock them out of ride-sharing apps and block them from buying tickets for flights or trains. Like what China did to people who were traveling to protest banks freezing their accounts. In this specific case, the Chinese government relied on their citizens' COVID contact tracing. During COVID, citizens had to sign up for an app that would track their COVID status and whether or not they had been in contact with anyone who tested positive. If your profile was green, you have not been exposed to anyone with COVID, and you could travel and work. But if your code was yellow or red, you have to say goodbye to your ability to shop, use public transport, or go to work. When the protests broke out, they changed everyone's COVID status to red. That way none of them would be able to travel or gather to protest. Handy, right? But China takes it even further than just using this for extreme cases like protesting. Every year, China bans millions of people from buying plane tickets because their social credit score is too low. And in some cases, even their children aren't allowed into good schools anymore, just because their parents did something the government sees as bad behavior. Think about how powerful that social pressure is. Oh, your daughter didn't get into a good school? She must be stupid, or you must be a really bad person. In China, if you don't play by the government's rules, they will turn you and your family into social outcasts. And this dystopian future isn't even as far away as most of us imagine. It looks like Italy is rolling out Europe's first social credit system this year. Good citizens will get rewarded for doing things like separating their trash from recycling, using public transport instead of their own car, conserving energy in their home, obedient stuff like that. This new social credit program only includes rewards for now, no punishments yet. And if it rolls out, more cities are sure to follow. But there's one more critical step to gaining full control over society: money. Step 4. Control the money. Today, many of us already pay by swiping our credit card or phones over some electronic device, so most of our transactions are already being tracked. But there is still a lot of cash flowing around in this world. As the World Economic Forum, we don't like that at all. Why? Because cash is offline. We can't see what they're buying if it's in cash. Plebs could withdraw $100 from their bank account and buy a banned book on the black market, for crying out loud. Or they could blow all that money in a gentleman's club. This is a big no-no. So another goal of the WEF and Klaus Schwab is to introduce a single digital currency to be used all over the world. Kinda like Bitcoin, but with a twist. Unlike Bitcoin, which is completely decentralized, their digital currency would be fully centralized. They call it Central Bank Digital Currency, or CBDC. And they're working on it as we speak.
No, I'm quite glad to hear what you're saying, François, on the wholesale digital currency, not coin. I am also a believer that will come in 5 years, yes. What I try to say is obviously, we still have those huge legacy environment. They need to migrate as well, so we will not yet see all the benefits coming through, but it will come and will be much more efficient, also probably much more secure, lowering transaction costs. On the retail side, I'm much more skeptical. Certainly call it for the established economies.
This digital currency would still live on the blockchain, so every single transaction is on there forever and can't be altered. but any sense of anonymity would go straight out of the window. Every transaction throughout the entire economy could be tracked and analyzed like never before. And the entire currency would be managed by a central authority. And it would still allow them to do neat things like print money on command. And if they spend money on things that are against our agenda, we could freeze their bank account. We already saw a glimpse of that during the truckers' protest in Canada. The truckers went against the system, they voiced their opinions, and the government froze their bank accounts. So we already know world leaders want to do this. A central bank digital currency would just make it a lot more efficient.
Digital cash could be programmed to ensure it is only spent on essentials or goods which an employer or government deems to be sensible. Holy shit. I'm going to take it one step further for you, Joe, right?
But it doesn't stop there. On top of controlling their money, plebs still have one source of economic power that we need to strip away from them: property. Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum predict that by 2030, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Plebs won't own a car, they won't own a house, they won't even own your cooking equipment. Don't believe us? Here's an actual quote from an article the World Economic Forum wrote in Forbes titled, "Welcome to 2030. I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better." Quote, "Welcome to the year 2030. Welcome to my city, or should I say, our city. I don't own anything. I don't own a car, I don't own a house. I don't own any appliances or any clothes. It might seem odd to you, but it makes perfect sense for us in this city. Everything you considered a product has now become a service. In our city, we don't pay any rent because someone else is using our free space whenever we don't need it. My living room is used for business meetings when I am not there. Shopping? I can't really remember what that is. Once in a while I get annoyed about the fact that I have no real privacy. Nowhere I can go and not be registered. I know that somewhere, everything I do, think, and dream of is recorded. I just hope that nobody will use it against me. They literally wrote this in the article. We had to do a double take to make sure that this is in fact the World Economic Forum's official Forbes account. All in all, it is a good life." End quote. Ah yes, life will be good when mega corporations own literally everything, no one has any private property, and your entire life will be at the mercy of those who do own the property. Kinda like feudalism. But you'll be safe. You won't have to worry about anything anymore. Everything will be for your convenience. And if the convenience argument doesn't convince the plebs, guilt trip them with climate change and how they're ruining the planet. Quote, "All in all, it is a good life. Much better than the path we were on, where it became so clear that we could not continue with the same model of growth. We had all these terrible things happening. Lifestyle diseases, climate change, the refugee crisis, environmental degradation, completely congested cities, water pollution, air pollution, social unrest, and unemployment. We lost way too many people before we realized that we could do things differently." End quote. But behind closed doors, you and I know that it's all about power and control. So now that we know our end game of where we need the world to end up, how are we going to get there? How are we actually going to get the world to transform into our vision? It's going to take a lot of new laws, a lot of new policies, and laws and policies are changed by politicians. That means we got to get influence and infiltrate the world's politicians. We got to turn as many of them as possible into our marionettes. One way the WEF influences politicians and people in positions of power to think their way is through their annual meeting in Davos. This is the WEF's fancy annual event where the rich and powerful literally gather to discuss and strategize where to take the world next. Artificial intelligence, climate change, cybersecurity, the metaverse, and other buzzwords like that are all discussed at Davos so all participants can feel special and important. while at the same time, the WEF slides in things they want to push, like the Great Reset agenda. But what if there was a much more effective way of spreading the WEF's goals? What if instead of waiting until Davos to try to convince politicians to agree with you once a year, what if you could avoid all of this in the first place? What if politicians from around the world were already bought into the WEF's philosophy from the start? That's exactly what Klaus Schwab had in mind when he founded the Forum of Young Global Leaders in 2004, a sort of internship program to train the leaders of tomorrow. According to the website, the goal is to mold young people into strong leaders who will, quote, shape a more inclusive and sustainable future, end quote. In other words, WEF and Klaus Schwab are training young, power-hungry wannabe leaders in their ideology and political ideas. They are telling them exactly what kind of future they will be fighting for, and they have been silently infiltrating governments around the world for decades.
When I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. What we are very proud of now, the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
But no one knows exactly what they are teaching those leaders of the future. No one knows what they're being trained for, their political agenda, or how much power they will eventually have over certain countries. And when people start asking questions, strange things happen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I listened to my colleague's speech. I had a constituent that wanted me to ask a question about outside interference to our democracy. Klaus Schwab is the head of the World Economic Forum, and he bragged how his subversive WEF, World Economic Forum, has, quoted, infiltrated governments around the world. He said that his organization had penetrated more than half of Canada's cabinet. And I was wondering, in the interest of transparency, could the member please name which cabinet ministers are on board with the WEF's agenda? My concern is the deputy.
Order. I know that the member was in a really good question there, but the audio is really bad, and the video is really bad as well. And I apologize. I don't know if the member. Okay, let's try again. The honorable member for Timmins James Bay.
Mr. Speaker, that member is promoting open disinformation. That's not debate. We have to call it disinformation.
We'll get into debate again.
Strange. I didn't have any trouble hearing the question, and apparently the other member of parliament heard well enough to dismiss it as disinformation.
And voila! There you have it. The Great Reset and how the WEF plans to get there. But it's important to note that although yes, the Great Reset is very suspect, it still is just a plan at the end of the day. A goal that they're hoping to make into reality. Sure, they have a lot of money, influence, and powerful people that believe in it, but the good news is that all of this is still your choice at the end of the day. You get to choose whether or not you put up with more surveillance in exchange for convenience and security. You get to choose whether or not you own any possessions. So choose, and choose wisely. It seems like the World Economic Forum and its leader Klaus Schwab are working tirelessly on getting more and more control over society. And if we're not careful, we may end up as prisoners in an evil system, getting brainwashed 24 hours a day. But the WEF isn't the first organization that wants full control over people to turn them into mindless puppets. Beginning in the 1950s, the CIA ran a very special program called MK Ultra, and it was one of the darkest projects the CIA ever called into life. The scientists behind MK Ultra would test all sorts of drugs and torture techniques on as many people as they could. with the goal of finding the perfect combination of chemicals and psychological or physical abuse to create a completely controllable puppet. They wanted the ability to create a Manchurian candidate, a programmed killer who would kill on command without any remorse and forget about it a moment later. But talking about all the details of MK Ultra, the torture and so forth, would definitely get demonetized if we were to post it publicly. That's why we've released a private documentary into every dark, evil secret MK Ultra holds, available only to members of this channel. And so far, members have been loving the documentary. All you have to do to get access to this video on MK Ultra is to click the join button below. Once you're a member of our channel, you will also have access to all the other private documentaries, like our latest one on the connection between Victoria's Secret and everyone's favorite island owner, Jeffrey Epstein. And you get all of this knowledge that the world will never teach you for just $5 a month. And there's a refund policy too, unlike most YouTube memberships. So if you join and you don't think it's worth it, email us within your first month of joining, and we will personally refund you for your first month. After your first month, there is no refund. So scroll down and hit that join button now.
I personally usually don't like videos like this because they usually never provide a clear motive as to why someone will want to do this if they're in a position of power. So I really want to emphasize that in this video so it makes more sense. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you're new here, this is one of the biggest channels on YouTube for documentaries on money, power, war, and crime, so that you can learn how the world really works instead of becoming a victim to it. So if you like that philosophy, if you want to be more dangerous, click that subscribe button below. You can follow me on Instagram at Tran. But that is going to wrap it up. Thanks for being part of the Watch to the End Club. Stay dangerous out there, and I will see you guys in the next one.